2018. I'm in Valdosta, Georgia. I just returned from Omaha, Nebraska, by way of Atlanta, Georgia. While in Omaha, I did a little filming at the Omaha, Nebraska Memorial Foundation dedication to Malcolm X. While in Omaha, I started receiving phone calls concerning what's going on here in Valdosta, Georgia, about the renaming of Forrest Street. And I was sent emails about the controversy concerning this local religious leader by the name of Reverend Floyd E. Rose. I watched the condemnation of this man, and they gave all kind of reasonings and excuses and criticism concerning him speaking about renaming Forrest Street to the name of President Barack Hussein Obama. I went and got all the articles published by the Valdosta Daily Times, the only local newspaper here in Valdosta, and to listen to what the Valdosta Daily Times said about Forrest Street. We all know how Forrest Street got its name. I was among the 15 people that were arrested in the process of renaming Barber Park to Saunders Park. And we all know that the Valdosta Daily Times, along with local newspapers and television stations, did not publish the beef of why the black and white right communities wanted that ugly name removed from that park that was in a predominantly black community. And now we read in the paper how people are justifying keeping Forrest. If I may, let me set the record straight with nothing but the truth. Number one, this is fact number one. Reverend Rose was not the originator of naming Forrest Street after President Barack Obama. It was from a female tax-paying citizen here in Valdosta in Lowndes County, Georgia. This female brought this up to me several years ago. It was brought up at one civil rights organization meeting known as the People's Tribunal. And it was heard by one Reverend Floyd E. Rose, who took action because he thought there was some legitimate concerns concerning this taxpayer's question. And so, don't blame Reverend Floyd E. Rose. Why are people criticizing him when he was not the originator? That's a fact. I can prove it. I can even bring forth the lady who first conceived that into her mind. Reverend Floyd Rose is just one minister out of hundreds and perhaps thousands here in Valdosta, along with imams in Islam, rabbis in Judaism, and monks perhaps in other religions, that took it upon himself, as always, to address the concerns here in Valdosta and Lowndes County that would never be addressed if he did not address them. We have in this community black leaders, highly respected, highly educated, very influential, but will not take on the issues. of some other black leaders here in Valdosta in Lowndes County, Georgia, for reasons yet to be known and published to the people and taxpayers here in Valdosta. I'm not going to get into Edmund, well, whatever the Forrest individual name that has a history associated with the Ku Klux Klan. We're not going to get into that because you already know that. And if you don't, then do what I have done. I went to the Lowndes County Valdosta Historical Society, and this is not Floyd Rose doing. This is not the People's Tribunal doing. This document here reads at the bottom, source, Lowndes County Historical Society, Archives, U.S. Census Bureau, Slave Schedules, City of Valdosta Community Development Department. And it goes on to talk about what happened from 1825 to 1900, 1783, 1822, and it goes into sons and daughters of the Confederacy. I'm not going to get into this because it's already been archived. But when you read the Valdosta Daily Times articles, the Valdosta editor and the people at our only newspaper, there is no black newspaper here to get the black story out to the black community and to the white right community. And so we must understand something, that many problems here in Valdosta, especially along the line of federal dollars coming into Valdosta, contracts, blacks being excluded from the contracts, public meetings, and what takes place at these meetings that are never published to the general public is a direct result of Valdosta and Lowndes County not having a freedom of the press movement that will inform and educate the masses of the people here in Valdosta and Lowndes County, Georgia. This is not a figment of my imagination. This has been well documented for all the world to see. And so, as I close out this video, I just want you to know that Saunders Park one day was criticized as this situation is right now. And the Valdosta Daily Times editor at that time refused to tell the complete truth. Why informed the black folk wanted Barber Park renamed. Many of you do not know that that park had 2 artesian wells, and that in 1971, I believe, rather than integrate Barber Park, they closed it, covered up the pools, swimming pool, because they didn't want to include blacks in that pool to swim. Moreover, the Coca-Cola plant here, Mark Barber, whose name was associated with that park, we went, along with Dr. Mark George, to the Historic Archive of Records and the library and found out that this white citizen would say that to black people, if they drink something that was called the red soda, it would lighten them up. Now, I didn't create this. This is a part of the Historic Archival Record before I was ever conceived in my mother's womb. Greetings, this is kvci.blogspot.com. I'm in Saunders Park. That's John W. Saunders Park here in Valdosta, Georgia. And coming to this park is like many other things in the city and in South Georgia in general. We do not keep the historical archival record the people who come after us will be lost forever, with a part of the history in South Georgia forever removed from the pages of history. Here is a monument or a capstone or a time capsule which reads, John W. Saunders was the first African-American extension agent in Lowndes County. He was extremely dedicated in serving youth and stressing the importance of education through a life of diligent service. He organized 4-H summer camps, provided leadership for the development of the historic Ham and Egg Show, and was instrumental in the creation of the J.L. Lomax Park. He served faithfully as a deacon at Macedonia First Baptist Church and continued to serve the Valdosta community beyond his retirement in 1975. Up until his death in 1987, Mr. Saunders truly exemplified his favorite scriptures. He who would be great among you, let him serve. Thank you. All due respect to Mr. John H. Saunders, his relatives, and family members. However, my name is George Boston Rhymes. I am one of the 15 people in the local community that were arrested here in Valdosta, Georgia, taken to the Lowndes County Jail, and booked for 24 plus hours because we sought the name of Barber Park to be changed to John W. Saunders Park. How many of Mr. Saunders' family members were a member of the People's Tribunal at that time? I cannot say. I do know that we were criticized for removing the name Barber from this park. Many black African Americans with limited knowledge said, why can't Reverend Rose, why can't those silly people find something better to do than to get a name rechanged on a park that has no significance to us, our family, and it will not put any more money in our pockets. They did not understand, as we did not understand, that Mr. Barber, and we dug down in the archival records, and we found out that Mr. Barber had this entire park renamed. Not renamed, but he had it closed. There were 2 artesian wells, the history tells us about, that was closed because in the 70s when integration came about, rather than to integrate this all-white park, it was closed. He wanted it closed. Furthermore, Mr. Barber, according to what I read in clippings from the newspaper that I received from the Woodrow Wilson Library, said that he would get in the black community, have black people to drink something they call the red soda to lighten them up a little. Now, I would never say that Mr. Barber was a racist, but what I believe is, as all other people have monuments, streets, buildings named in honor of their historical past and their leaders, then black African Americans should have the same thing. We know that there was members on the Valdosta City Council and Mayor John Freddy who were against the renaming of this park. But because we challenged the status quo, we stood up against the powers who did not understand. And eventually, the park was changed. They even called for a select committee. And the select committee, which was a group of African American people that was selected, but those people were not the ones who worked, who went to jail, who fought every inch of the way, who paid to get the research and information about this park and the racist, discriminatory past brought to the forefront. But we were ignored. So this plaque is a great honor to Mr. John W. Saunders, but somewhere on this public property, I believe there should be another plaque to show that the American citizens, black and white, stood for what was right, and we got that name removed from this park, and now the family can come out here in pride. This plaque would not have been here had it not been for people like Reverend Floyd Rose and the People's Tribunal and the NAACP and the SCLC. And so I want us to keep the historical truth alive. And I hope that the Saunders family will understand John W. Saunders family members will understand that this park was not renamed just because of just because, but because 15 of us stayed the course. And there were more than that. There was about 30 that stood up in city council or more, but only 15 of us were arrested. But there are no historical monuments about the freedom fighters who continues to fight for people who don't even know there is a fight. My name, George Boston Rhymes, kvci.blogspot.com, on YouTube, Boston G.B.R. We do this because we know that there is an asserted effort in our community to keep the people deaf, dumb, and blind to the times, and unable to make intelligent decisions based on facts. But I intend to let the people know that America's principles was upon freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And we must stand for those freedoms, or we just may lose them forever. The facts of reality is that 15 people went to jail to get this plaque that you're looking at here now. Otherwise, everything would have remained the same. There would not have been any pride from the John W. Saunders family if we had not stood up in the name of Jesus, Mohammed, and the son of Amram and G.B.R. Moses, and others who travel that great line of holy divine. I'm saying to you, stand up, and stand up on the side of truth and justice, because it's just the right thing to do. Bye-bye, we gone. And so when we found this information out, along many other things, along the ugly racial divide, we came together, a group of concerned citizens, and now Barber Park is now known as Saunders Park by a group of black people that the mayor and council elected to serve on a committee. None of those people, not one black person on that committee that I am aware of that fought for anything along the lines of civil rights, that their life or their job or their position or their family members could have been threatened. They don't get into stuff like that. And so we watched in shock and awe how white people and Uncle Toms and Aunt James sit over us, but will not represent us after we vote them into office to do such. While I stand before you concerning the renaming of Forrest Street, I would like for you to ask yourself another question. The things that the Valdosta Daily Times allowed to be published in this newspaper is great. We want to commend them for wanting to publish all of this information concerning Forrest Street. What has the Valdosta Daily Times, what has WALB, what has CBS, NBC published concerning right now, at this very moment, not last week when I was in Omaha, Nebraska, but this very moment? What have they published about? There is no Georgia flag flying over Valdosta City Hall as I speak. There is no Georgia flag flying over the city annex here in Valdosta, Georgia, as I speak. Go down to the museum, historical museum, and see if you see a Georgia flag flying. And if not, as a tax-paying citizen, why not? And as you ride through the city of Valdosta, not only local businesses that used to fly the old Georgia cross-buck Southern Heritage flag, they took it down when the state of Georgia brought into existence another flag. And so, if you don't believe that symbolism means something to white America, then you must have been living underground in the core of the earth. Too many citizens here in Valdosta are living in a state of ignorance. And the sad thing about it, they don't even know it. And others are so deep and concerned about the afterlife that they don't give a heaven about the current life. And so this is why when people come to Valdosta, they only find one newspaper, the Valdosta Daily Times. If you go to any city in the state of Georgia the size of Valdosta, you will find another newspaper, not just one. Not just one. And TV stations that will not even report what takes place in the Kendrick Johnson court case. I'm telling y'all, we send our sons and our daughters to fight the wars of this nation, the nation that I love enough to serve without selling this nation out during my military career. And yet, people do not understand what's going on because there's no news media concerned about freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and your right to know. In America's Georgia, when you go through, I often frequent America's, I go just to pick up the newspapers. 5 to 7 or 8 newspapers, even as we speak. So the people will be educated, not only the white news, the news that affect white people, but I'm talking about the NAACP over there having a valid banquet with people from around the world, and your favorite leaders from Temple universities come to speak. Not the bourgeois Negroes, but people on the every common day level attend the NAACP there because they have information distributed that will keep the people educated and not indoctrinated. And so I've been saying for at least 20 years, even before I retired from the armed forces, that there is a white pattern and practice to keep the people in South Georgia deaf, dumb, and blind to the times and unable to make a tough decision based on facts. I close out this video. I will be doing others, and I will stay on point with the renaming of Forrest Street. But I came this morning to set the record straight. Do not, you can if you will, it don't matter because some of you don't care nothing about truth anyway. I believe our current outstanding president is proving that to be factual, that people do not care about truth at this dispensation. But the people of God, the people that love humanity, the people who love life over death, the people who want a universal connected relationship with the rest of the world cares about the truth. For they understand apparently that only the truth will set us free. And if we continue down the ugly historic path that America has traveled, to those people that are on the wrong side of history, tomorrow your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and coming generations will laugh at you. Yeah, man, they'll laugh at you. That's what's happening today. There were people on the wrong side of history in the 40s and 50s. Even the young white kids now are laughing at their own parents because they was on the wrong side of history. And according to Matthew 24:35, heaven and earth will pass away, but truth will stand forever. And so I just want to commend one minister in this community over all others, because I am sure that many pastors was informed about the same subject matter as Reverend Rose, but they didn't say nothing, they didn't get up, and they didn't do nothing. And now that when one got up, most of them will not even stand up on the issue of having a street renamed. Now, we read in the paper that there's a possibility that Forrest Street was not even named after this white gentleman, but rather a black person by the name of, well, you all read the paper, named after a alleged black person. What about all these other streets here in Valdosta? Ashley Street, Lee Street, and all these other streets that are named after leaders that was not a reflection of the founding fathers of this great republic, even if it didn't include black people. And not just Valdosta. Throughout the South, streets are named after people with real ugly pasts. I won't even go to Brooks County and tell you what happened between Mr. Brooks and what happened on the floor of a government building that intertwined with South Carolina. I won't even talk about that. But the historical facts is what we see today. We see God's word being fulfilled each and every day. We see nice churches going up who will not stand for nothing that Jesus would stand up if he was here today. So we must ask a question if we haven't lost our mind. Why all these big churches? Why all these people frequent these big, nice churches and wear suits and ties and tuxedos and et cetera, and other religious garb, but won't stand up for anything outside of the four walls of the church or the mosque or the synagogue or the temple or the masjid on the al-Islam? So why is it and how could it be that the men of the cloth yesterday worked to bring about a more balanced society? Why did they process information that was good for the volume of sacred law writ, rather than just going down a road that we all know will fail in the end? Because as it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. I'm not talking about the returning of the Messiah Jesus. I'm talking about something greater than that. Oh yeah? Yeah. Jesus said, I am the Word. I am the way. So I'm talking about the return of truth. All the lies and falsehoods and racial, historical, one-sided, lying hypocrites disguise themselves as a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, etc., but they practice the hate of Satan. So, y'all have a nice day. Excuse the length. I'm just pregnant, can't give birth. But I just want you all to know that, short form, the renaming of Forrest Street did not come from Reverend Rose. Reverend Rose, like Moses, he just heard the cry of the masses of the people. Just like Jesus, he heard the cry of the masses of the people. Just like Ezekiel in the dry bones in the valley, he heard the yearnings of the souls of the people weeping, and they wanted relief. They wanted something of value that their children could look upon in the same manner as those that set these streets up that they could identify with. And so we must understand that the Bible says, for heaven and earth would pass away, but his word will stand forever. And so again, I close where I started. What I said to you is the truth. You can criticize one individual, but are you criticizing the right person? And are you looking at these other streets here in Valdosta, Georgia? The Valdosta Daily Times can just reflect upon what is written about Patterson Street, Captain James Patterson, owner of 14 slaves in 1860 who ranged in age 50 to 1 year old. You to my black folk now. Ashley Street, named after William Ashley, owner of 17 people in 1860. Troop Street, Governor George M. Troop in 1850 owned 209 slaves. Forrest Street, Nathan Bedford Forrest, a general in the Confederate Army, slave trader, slave owner, and leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Gordon Street, John Brown Gordon, a general in the Confederate Army and leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Lee Street, General Robert E. Lee, commander of the Confederate forces during the Civil War. Toombs Street, Senator Robert Augustus Toombs, owner of 16 people, 1860. Hill Street, Senator Benjamin Harvey Hill, 1860, owner of people or slaves. Jerry Jones Drive, I repeat, Jerry Jones Drive. Jeremiah Jerry Jones, son of Barry and Rebecca Jones, in 1860, Jeremiah Jones owned people. Converse Avenue, Albert Converse owned people in 1860. Dasher Lane, J.A. Dasher owned 25 slaves or people, 1860. Briggs Street, W.H. Briggs owned people, and the list goes on and on. And if they have this list, just imagine how many more that is buried beneath the courthouse or buried beneath City Hall that only white people have access to. But according to the book of Revelations, there would be nothing hidden that would not be revealed. And that's all we see among us. So we are looking forward to the editor of the Valdosta Daily Times, and we're looking for CBS, ABC, NBC, and other TV stations to step up and tell the truth. Because in the end, it's going to be told anyway. And that's all we're looking at. The fulfillment of the God of our ancestors. That's all. That's all. That's all, man. You can read into it whatever you want. You can blame Reverend Rose or anybody else you want to. But the final analysis is that God's word must be fulfilled. And we can't get around it, man. You know, I mean, come on, man, let's get with it. Again, I love you. If I did not love you, number one, I wouldn't have went to Kingsland, Georgia, where the black man was shot 8 times as he was running away from Officer Presley. I wouldn't have gone to Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, Atlanta, Saturday night last. I would not have gone. Knowing that the news media will not publish. They will not connect the dots. If you really want to see what the white-owned, white-controlled, white-dominated news media refuse to publish, go to my YouTube channel with 1 million, almost 500,000 views around the world, and over 3,000 subscribers. That means that when I upload this video, automatically 3,000 people will get this video in their inbox. So if you want to, you can subscribe to my channel. But I don't ask anybody to subscribe. All I do is give you the truth and let you decide whether you are a fruit that fell from the good tree or a fruit that fell from the bad tree. I'm standing up for the good tree. I don't go to church. I don't fall down on the floor like you do. I don't play your religious games like you do. I don't take money from the elderly. I don't soundbite. I don't snip it. I don't do that. I love my God, and I respect your God. My God demands that I help build a better civilization. My God tells me that when I see these black elected officials being attacked by white people, and black Uncle Toms and Aunt James, and when no news media will connect the dots, and when white law enforcement members take them before a superior court judge, white mostly, always white, and they remove them without any real news coverage of the beef of why they are removed, then that troubles me in my heart. And I think about my service to this country, and I think about my fellow active duty personnel, and my disabled military folk, and my retired military veterans who just say and do nothing, yet they was willing to die for this country, willing to go in foreign lands and sweat blood and die for a nation that will not even grant freedom of the press, freedom of the speech, and will not even find a way to get a black newspaper here in Valdosta so we can get a balanced diet, so we can be educated and not incarcerated or intimidated. The Quitman 10+2 brought up on over 200 voter fraud charges, and after 3 years, all of them was dropped by Secretary of State Brian P. Kemp in the court system, but you don't even know nothing about it because the Valdosta Daily Times did not go to the court, that 19-day court case. No TV stations, no newspapers. It was a total whiteout. And you mean to tell me I'm not supposed to say nothing about it? I'm supposed to go somewhere and hide like your religious leaders here in South Georgia? No, 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 I can't do that. Some of us got to stand up for black folk like Donald Trump and others are standing up for white folk. And don't y'all take it wrong, because there's a lot of white people who know the truth and are standing up trying to bring in a better United States of America. And I say to black folk, stop hating on white folk. Some white folk was fighting for black folk before we knew what the fight was all about, and we still have them here today. Some of them started out with us yesterday, but if you look for them, they are nowhere to be found. Jesus said it like this: if you would have been with us in the beginning, you would have been with us in the end. David said, my own familiar friend, who sat at my table, who drank wine with me, who supped with me, have lifted up his heels against me. And Jesus said, have I not chosen you 12 apostles, and one of you is a devil? This is why I know black folk don't walk with me. I know you. You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. You don't fool me by going to church, hollering hallelujah, hallelujah, and hallelujah. I know you. And they're all the children of God. We know the wicked people because we see the fruits that fall from their tree. They got envy, they got jealousy, they got murder, they got hatred, they got hearsay, they got all these wicked fruits falling from their trees, and yet they call themselves a Christian. The heaven you are. You ain't no Christian, man. You are just like Satan in the book of Job, when the saints of God went to present themselves before the Lord, and people like you went in among them, but God called you out because God loved people more than he loved profit and more than he loved death. And that's why I'm here today, to give you truth, because without truth there can be no freedom. Once again, Floyd Rose did not call for the name of the Forrest Street, but a black female here in Valdosta was the one that called for that years ago. Years ago. But he was the minister over all other ministers that said something, stood for something, and walked in the streets trying to get that name changed. And personally, I'm going to walk with them soon, because the people have a right to know the truth and not a lie Again, may God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. Thank you, Brother Gordon. May God bless you. I give you the truth because I love you. If I didn't love you, there's no way I could do this. And I've been doing this since 75. And I've been called a lot of dirty names. And if you notice, I'm still on the battlefield in the war zone of America. Bye-bye. We gone.
And so here in Valdosta, Lowndes County, Georgia, we have many colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains, first and second lieutenants, chief master sergeants, and many other high-ranking military personnel. Some are retired U.S. Marshals. Some are gunnery sergeants, sergeant majors. Some of them are admirals. All retired here in Valdosta and Lowndes County, Georgia, along with common disabled, ordinary veterans, and retired military veterans. But even more disappointing to me as a retired military veteran of over 20 years is that Titletown, USA, Valdosta and Lowndes County, Georgia, is home to an active duty military base just a few miles away from Valdosta. I did 2 tours of duty out there. That federal installation name is Moody Air Force Base. I can only imagine what our active duty military personnel say when they come to Valdosta City Hall and they look on the flagpole and don't see a Georgia state flag. Some people at Moody was first in the National Guard Armory, and they was in the reserves, and they was activated, and they just remained on active duty stationed at Moody Air Force Base. But now they look up on that pole right there, and they see the United States flag flying by itself, as if though the state of Georgia, as if the state of Georgia never started or created or developed a state flag like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Omaha, Nebraska. I just returned from Omaha, Nebraska, and I noticed City Hall and other government buildings there in Omaha. They had the United States flag and they had the state flag, and they fly it very proudly. But not here in Valdosta. This is the city annex right here. This is where contracts are made, DOT and federal dollars, and there's a United States flag. But what about the people stationed at Moody Air Force Base? Why cannot both the city and county elected officials, now this is the judicial complex where we go to court, where we expect to receive justice, and no Georgia flag. Well, I'm just a citizen, but, here again, nobody cares. Nobody cares. If you go down to the museum, it's a total whiteout. And just remember, I'm going to add this information from the Valdosta Daily Times, how 15 of us were arrested at the Valdosta City Council meeting back in 2005, trying to get Barber Park renamed because this white individual exhibited, according to newspaper clippings from the local library, that he did not want blacks into the local park, and so the rest is history. Once again, I'm George Foster Rhymes, and I do this because nobody else will. We have other newspapers, we have TV stations, But they are blind to all of this. They ignore all of this. And yet, you go fight, you go to war, you send your children, your grandchildren, and great-grands to fight for a nation who will not even have a newspaper, a television station, or a radio station that will just look up and say, we cannot continue to disrespect the taxpayers here in Valdosta and Lowndes County. We cannot keep disrespecting those military personnel from all over the United States and the world now stationed at Moody Air Force Base. I'm going to continue to be a voice and stand with the white Europeans that set this nation up by spiritual guidance, even if it did not include blacks in the beginning. I bear witness, and I believe that America is the greatest nation on the earth today. Faults and all. Yes, faults and all. But it's up to us to make her be better and to come in a closer alignment with all the holy books of right and righteousness in the eyes of the most holy and divine creator, or karma, or just whatever you want to call it. This is the Get To Free Press, and I'm George Boston Rhymes. I report what others ignore because I love you, and I love my children. I love my grandchildren. I love my great-grands. I even love coming generations. Even if you don't love them, I do. Peace be unto you, and may heaven smile upon you. You can share this with your friends if you like, but I'm sure most of you probably don't care. And so just don't worry about it. But in the end, truth, right, and justice will win beyond question.
My name is George Boston Rhymes, kvci.blogspot.com. I'm standing at the location of John W. Saunders Park. John W. Saunders Memorial Park of Valdosta, Georgia. When you look at this name and you think about this beautiful park here, you would think that this is all behind this park. But before this name was added to this park, it had another name, Barbers Park. 15 of us went to jail, stayed over 24 hours in the Lowndes County Jail to get this park renamed. We petitioned our mayor, John Freddy, and the then council members on renaming this park. We also wanted a theater, historical theater that would take on the museum aspect of the city, much like they have in Thomasville, a much smaller city. So we petitioned our elected officials, and of course, 15 of us went to jail by the mayor and council. It was as if though they did not want us to challenge the historical negativity of the park's background. After research, we found out that Mr. Barber, I'm not downing the man, this is a historical fact, that this park was an all-white park. Blacks was not allowed to come into this park nor swim in the swimming pools. And so rather than allow blacks in the swimming pools, in the 70s, they had the swimming pools filled in. The 2 artesian wells was covered up. This is a matter of record because we did open record research and found in the newspaper the history of this park. I don't want to get into that. I'm about to bring this to a close. I just want you all to know that behind Sanders' car is an untold story that you may never know unless somebody lets you know. There is no historical marker with the 15 people that with the J.R. name on it to get this name rechanged. And so, just like Mayor Freddie and our council members, James Wright, Councilman Yost, White, Payton, Carroll, Norton, and Vickers, move citizens to be heard to the end of the agenda. Just like this park, there was a great price to get this park renamed, from whom some call a racist. I don't know about that. Mr. Barber, I don't know about that. But I do know that there is a story behind this name getting on this park. 15 people by name was arrested. Upstanding citizens to get this name changed. In other words, there was a great price paid for this name to be changed to John W. Sanders. So whether the family know it or not, whether the people in this community and in America know it, there was a price that was paid. And since our mayor and our elected officials moved citizens to be heard from the beginning of Valdosta City Council meetings to the last item on the agenda, which means no councilman are required to answer the questions of the problem brought before the council. Therefore, I think the mayor and city council should pay a price. We paid a price to get this name changed, and I believe the mayor and those elected officials that voted against citizens' rights should be removed from office. I do not take a back row seat from that because I believe it's the right thing to do. This is a beautiful park, but I want you all to know, and let history record, one day this will go down in the Valdosta Museum that 15 people were arrested for doing the right thing. And when I did my initial presentation on the name of Mr. Barber, name being removed from this park, I stood before the mayor and I made these words: that if you fail to change the name of that park because it denied blacks in a predominantly 90-some% black community, then history will record this fact. But there will be greater council members and mayors that will come to undo what you all have done. So eventually they reluctantly renamed this park. And I told them a few weeks ago that I'm 100% sure that in the city of Valdosta, some mayor, some council members will come forward that will take the citizen to be heard from the end or the last item of the agenda, move it at least toward the front of the meeting before everybody vacates the room, and they will not be heard. Now we don't have a news media, nor television, or radio station that will report what happens at the meetings anyway. It's been like that for 2 or 3 or 4 decades. And so what takes place at our public meetings here in Valdosta and Lowndes County is not getting out to the general public. I've been saying it, and I will continue to say it until it changes. It must be changed. If we are to keep sending our sons and daughters to die in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, and other wars around this nation that we don't even know about, we as a people in America will either stand up for what's right, or we are all perish and die as fools. It is time now for us who love this country to stand up on behalf of this country and stop sending our sons and our daughters to die for rights of other countries while we watch our own rights in this country go to hell. It's just that simple. And so I close to let you know behind John W. Saunders Park here in Valdosta is an untold story. And I think that there should be another story told behind the mayor and our elected officials who disrespect and wish the citizens be heard to the end of that agenda, as if though we are zero, as if though they don't want to hear nor respond to the voters here in Valdosta and South Georgia. And it is indeed time for a change. And that change will not come if we are not willing to change. We got to get up out of our comfort zone and take a stand. If they're going to sit on council and say they represent us, but don't stand with us, then we need to get them from among us. This is Valdosta, Georgia, and the mother here in Valdosta wanted me to record this, and I told her I would. The newspaper reads, "It's all about you." But she said it was not about her 14-year-old daughter that were handcuffed at Pine Grove Middle School. No news media in South Georgia have reported that to the general public, much like the 31 jail deaths, much like my criminal trespass warning. I am now into my 68th day of being banned from Lowndes County school properties by persons and parties unknown. We had better wake up here in South Georgia to the mother, the father, and the 14-year-old girl. I just got word that soon there will be somebody outside of Valdosta that will be reporting y'all's story. Once again, headlines is all about you, but not about the 14-year-old middle school student that were handcuffed and charged with felony, a felony charge. Later found out that there's a possibility that records was falsified or an untrue statement. This is Boston G.B.R. on YouTube. It is sad, but in the end, truth, justice, and right will win. Bye-bye. We're gone. This is kvci.blogspot.com, George Boston Rhymes, again in Valdosta City Hall. I am on the first floor of Valdosta City Hall. And over 2 years ago, I talked about not having black African American pictures displayed here in City Hall. I believe that we are now our metro city, and that Valdosta should represent all of the people in terms of the historical makeup of our beloved city. Not only in Valdosta, but in other cities across America, especially the rural areas. I repeat, the rural areas should be diverse. It should be inclusive for all people. All buildings and historical monuments, at least a few should be represented to show that we all contributed in all the wars, including the Revolutionary War of this great republic. I brought it before the mayor, John Freddy, and our county commission and our city council members, including the black ones, that there are no pictures of the buildings or people of black African American descent, for the most part, displayed in this building, or especially down this hallway. It is my belief that it would be so easy to include the people who lived at that era. And when our children come into this public building from the various schools and university and Georgia Military College and Wiregrass Technical College, when they come into this building, they should be able to see what they and their ancestors did to ensure that this community took a stand and was fair and equal to all people. And if the history is such that it did not include people, at least show the truth of the time period
in which these pictures are a reflection of. Since I addressed the Valdosta City Mayor and Council, to my knowledge, nothing has been done, but I was promised, and it should be in the Valdosta City Council minutes, that something was going to be done. I, George Buster Rhymes, volunteered to go into the black community to find pictures of some building that's in the black community to be posted in this hallway. Of course, that has been ignored. But we have not forgotten that, and we will forever stay on the case that something is displayed in this wall to show that we traveled along this route on our way to inclusion here in the city of Valdosta, Georgia. This is kvci.blogspot.com or on YouTube, Boston G.B.R. No, better yet, let's take a walk down the hallway so you can get a better feel and understanding of what I'm talking about. We have done this before, and so I will be brief. You can pick this up on my blog, kvci.blogspot.com. That was in 1912, 1907, and the courthouse buildings here in the city. Coming on down the wall, the Crescent building and here in the city, the Cotton Exchange, and it was downtown, and of course a locomotive back in 1860. We also come down for the first home of Wildcats in 1905. I'm sure that there was black schools somewhere in the city. All it would have to do is just put some type of picture that's reflective of that time period. Now we understand that we may have some blacks there standing on the sidewalk, but the question is, when our children of black African American descent and Spanish Americans, Latinos come, they too, I'm sure, would want to be represented on these walls of this public building, for it is only the right thing to do. We also see here Valdosta State College. We see the Crescent again. But the question remains, where are the black buildings from the black African American community here in Valdosta, the city that we all contributed to and helped to build? I think that it should be a part of the history of Valdosta and Lowndes County. There is a time now when our children should feel good about themselves and not consider themselves as inferior or 3/5 of a human being. As we all know, history has allotted for certain segments of people in our beloved nation. Here again, it is what it is, but I will always be for inclusion. And if this hallway were in a black town and excluded whites, I would do the same thing. I would want white pictures displayed. Why? Because of the fact we all are part of this great city, county, nation, and world. Once again, we do what we do because we want to keep you informed. This also means that if you're in your local city, you may need to walk in your city and do a report and make sure that everybody that make up your beloved city has been accounted for, has been recognized for their accomplishments, so no child or children or adults or those who come after us will think or believe that nothing was contributed to the well-being of their community simply because they were excluded from the history of our world. This is kvci.blogspot.com. George Buster Rhyme, doing what we do because this is what we do. Once again, today is December the 30th, 2011. And of course, once again, this is a picture of our historic first black mayor, Sonny Vickers.
and we can only ask. He was selected, not elected. But I believe it's time for us to elect a black mayor after 150 some odd years. Not because they are black, but because they are qualified to run this city. If a black person can run the city of Atlanta and other major cities across the United States of America, then why not Valdosta inner city that is approximately 59% black African American? It is indeed time for us to make a great change here in the city of Valdosta and Lowndes County and the state of Georgia in general. Once again, George Boston Rhymes, kbci.blogspot.com, doing what we do here in Valdosta, Georgia, the city that I retired in. And if you have retired in a rural area, you too may need to do what I'm doing to keep the record and the bread fresh and carry on the dream of Dr. King and others who travel that great line of Holy Divine. Bye-bye. We go.
looking into history, I know that we've surely been blessed, coming out of misery to a rising sun in the west. Why should we cling to the earth when we can reach to the sky? I wanna know. It's time that we realize our worth. Stop letting time pass us by, 'cause we've got independent leadership and guidance divine. Indecision is decision. So make up your mind. Stop wasting time and move with conviction. No need to have any fear. Got to be mindful of our mission. The victory is near now. Now that we have the truth, let's see if we can be people who really care. Humanity. Let's build a world anew. Uplift society. It belongs to me and you. Responsibility. We've had to face many problems, yeah. Sometimes we even hang our heads in disgrace. There just wasn't any answers to the questions. Why we could never seem to find our place. But then we experienced a mind evolution. We begin to strengthen efforts to find the solutions. Searching for the truth and yearning to succeed. The mind's eye revealed the reality that without moral direction, success we could never achieve. We'd only be heading for